r/Askreddit by Reddit and chill. What was a house rule you had as a kid that you thought was completely normal until you grew up and realized not all households followed? We had family council every Sunday night after dinner. We would sit and say good things that happened that week. Share our grievances if we had any, we always did. Make a dinner menu. And assign chores. Frankly, it was stellar parenting. Though, if I mention it to my mother now, she will brag about it for a solid 20 minutes before we can move on. Edit. Thank you magical human who gave me gold. She will brag about it for a solid 20 minutes before we can move on. You should bring that up in your next grievances report. I had super laid back parents, but there were a few certain things that they were randomly crazy strict about. No gum. No Play-Doh. No cereal with sugar as one of the top 3 ingredients. No Simpsons. I had basically no rules growing up. But those 4 things would make them lose their goddamn minds. I still get anxious when I'm chewing gum and I'm 35. We weren't allowed sugar cereals. I grew up on Cheerios, Kix, Chex, and Raisin Bran. Mum didn't buy anything else. Dad would occasionally buy grape nuts. But he was happy with Raisin Bran. Sleepovers were amazing. Because it meant I could have a bowl of Lucky Charms or Cocoa Puffs or Fruity Pebbles. Also no Simpsons here. Despite being a cartoon, it wasn't for kids. So we weren't allowed to watch it. We didn't have cable. So pickings were already slim sometimes. If I got hurt doing a certain activity, I wasn't allowed to do that activity again. My mother ended that rule though when I broke my wrist snowboarding when I was 16 and didn't tell her until a month later when I couldn't move my wrist at all and it required surgery with a bone graft to repair. I had that rule. 2. My mom bought me a skateboard. I immediately ate shit on it, as I imagine just about everyone does their first time. And then she took it right back to the store. We weren't allowed to eat anything without first asking. Even a glass of water. We were required to ask first. When my boyfriend and I started dating, I would ask his parents if I could eat or drink something if I was hungry or thirsty, and it was a hard habit to break when his mom told me I could literally eat or drink anything other than the alcohol. It was so weird to just go into the fridge or pantry without permission. I sometimes have to fight the urge to ask my BF if I can eat our food in our apartment. But when I went to my parents' house over Christmas, I was reprimanded for getting an apple without asking first. It's just all so weird, but it used to be so normal. Whenever I enter my childhood home, I instinctively open the fridge even if I don't want anything. I also tend to eat any fruit that is in the bowl, and I have no idea why. I come from a large family. Anytime we'd order pizza, we ordered a few different kinds because, obviously, there were different preferences. Any leftovers were left in their respective boxes and placed in the oven. I did that when I lived with a couple of roommates, and of course their reaction was, "I just burned this box. Why was this in the ducking oven?" My husband's mother does this. I can't tell you how many times I've nearly caught her oven on fire because she had a pizza box in there and I didn't know about it. I don't understand. Cheese needs to be refrigerated. We live in the South. It's hot and humid and mold grows everywhere. IDK how she hasn't gotten food poisoning. My dad used to set up mine and my sister's Easter egg hunts in such a way we followed written clues from place to place. As a way to help us learn to read. Until I was a young adult. I assumed that was how all kids did Easter egg hunts. When I was young, my mom was big on setting up treasure hunts like this for birthdays. I'd have to follow the clues to find my presents. I adored it. Wakey time. No noise annoying mum and dad until 7 AM. This was a really necessary one. BC I was a very early riser as a kid and I loved to talk to my parents. The rule was that I could come to their bed and curl up next to them. But I couldn't talk until 7. It was actually really nice. And made sure I got enough rest myself. Tragically, once I started rowing like 7 years later, Mum and dad had to get up at 4 anyway to get me to the sheds. Sorry guys. My niece is a very early riser. So my sister made the rule. If she sleeps over at grandma's, she is not to get up and wake grandma before a certain time. So she would lay in bed, looking at the digital clock till it was exactly 7 AM. She couldn't even read the clock properly. But you could ask her every time, when did you wake up? And she'd answer exact to the minutes, like 5:47, 5:47, and when did you get up? 7:00. She was such a cute bug. I wasn't allowed to take a shower if I was home alone. I also learned at age 7 that other households closed the bathroom door when using the toilet, and keeping it open was weird. I learned that by keeping the door open at a friend's house. A friend walked by the bathroom, saw me, told their mom. Their mom called my mom. And all of a sudden the new house rule was we close the bathroom door when using the toilet. I can't take a shower if I'm home alone either. My dad apparently busted his head open slipping in the shower when he was living alone in college. He had to get up and drive himself to the emergency room. Now he won't let us shower if we're alone, because he is paranoid the same will happen to us. Any of the kids, 7 of us, can play with any toy that is left out. The owner of the toy can't take it back until whoever's playing with it is done. If the toy is put away in the owner's room, permission must be asked. That's a good rule. My mom freaks out about hearing commercials on TV. The second it goes to commercial break, it has to be muted. She also mutes it if she thinks it's about to go to commercial, even though sometimes she's wrong. And she doesn't really pay attention. So she doesn't notice a lot of the time when the commercials are over, so she leaves it on mute when the show is back on. It's very difficult to watch TV with her. My parents would check my and my brother's teeth for sugar bugs every night after we brushed our teeth, before we got in bed. If they thought we were trying to skip brushing our teeth, they would tell us they could see the sugar bugs in our teeth and would make us go brush again. My brother and I were so convinced these sugar bugs were real, we would constantly ask when we'd be able to see them. My parents always told us only people 13 and older could see them. But by the time we got to be 13, we had completely forgotten about the sugar bugs in our teeth. I love thinking about creative parenting tactics like this. I've even used that one while babysitting a fussy kid who doesn't want to brush their teeth get ready for bed, and it helps a lot. Tape half the house off in winter. Winter meant the thermostat was turned to 55. All vents but living room vent get closed. Magnetic sheet put on the vents to prevent leaks. Then all the windows get the plastic sheeting and hairdryer treatment. Sheet hung from ceiling by staircase to prevent living room vent from sending all heat upstairs. Lots of baking done. Of course bathroom and kitchen vents stayed closed year round. Summer meant thermostat set to 80. All vents downstairs get closed and magnetic sheet put on. Curtains would be drawn 24/7. Oven use was kept to a minimum. My dad made a rule that I had to kill 7 flies a day during my summer break. How did you give him evidence? If you couldn't find something, and you asked someone for help, sibling or parent, and they found it for you, they got to punch you in the arm. Oh yes. We had that one. Me. Mooum. Where's a whatever? Mum. If I find it first, I get to smack you. Me. Never mind. If I told my parents I was leaving at a certain time, I had to leave at that time. Let's say I told my parents I would leave a party at 9. I couldn't leave at 8:50, or I'd get yelled grounded. I couldn't leave at 9:10, or I would get yelled grounded. Same thing went for when I was leaving my house to go somewhere. Why would they ground you for coming home early? Edit. Okay. I get it. They were ducking. Not a rule. But still to this day I am befuddled at my mother's reasoning. When I was a boy we lived in a pretty rural part of Mexico. Horrible infrastructure. Power would often go out in the middle of the night. She would proceed to wake my brother and I up, simply to wait until the power came back on. For the life of me I cannot figure that out. She wasn't afraid of the dark. She just wanted to make sure we saw the power return. Edit. Everyone keeps suggesting because if fire reasons, and come to think of it, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's actually how we lost that house. Maybe my mother is clairvoyant. Grid restoration can start electrical fires. Most places have ironed out the kinks at this point. But she and or her parents probably know a family or two who had their house catch fire while they slept. We weren't allowed to walk in our dining room unless we were using the room for a special occasion. The carpet always had that just vacuumed look, so it was a dead giveaway if anyone walked across it. I had to sleep in an unfinished, unheated basement. But my mom's living room was off limits. No whistling. We had this rule growing up. Because my mom can't whistle and it pissed her off that all of us can. Now that most of us are grown, we whistle whenever we want to. If she complains, the 5 of us whistling can drown her out. First thing upon coming in the house, you have to change into clean pants and wash your hands. Guests were exempt from the pants rule but not hand washing. If you took your shoes off while you were out, you had to change your socks as well. In Filipino culture, you change into your pambahay when you get home. Basically just more comfortable clothes. Light shirts, shorts, etc. I thought people in TV didn't cause they didn't wanna deal with the wardrobe change. Anyway, personally I don't feel home yet until I'm all changed. When I got in trouble I was put on reading restriction as a punishment. I loved to read as a kid, still do. So it was an effective punishment at the time. Same OMG. My parents would ground me from my DS that I loved, but it was actually just a trick so that when I was grounded it didn't really matter. Then they figured it out. And instead of grounding me from my DS, they grounded me from reading. And that was when I first started liking video games. It was funny because they never did both. My parents used a laissez-faire parenting style. No censorship whatsoever. I watched Rocky Horror Picture Show with my brother when I was 7. Pretty awkward when I brought the VHS with me to a sleepover at a friend's house. The parents were mortified. My parents were like this as well. I saw Airplane much younger than I should have. Their reasoning was that any inappropriate jokes would go over my head anyway. We weren't allowed to get into the fridge or the cabinets without asking permission. My family was very poor and we had a limited food budget. So eating something without permission very possibly meant eating one ingredient of a meal my stepmother was planning on cooking within the next few days. I went to friends' houses and they just ate whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Hey, at least one that isn't crazy and actually makes sense. Wasn't in my home, but my aunt and uncle never let us use the upstairs washroom when we were kids because they thought we'd touch the walls with our dirty hands, so they made us piss in a jar they kept under the kitchen sink and just poured it down the drain when we were done. Never thought it was strange until I brought it up to my cousin a few years ago. We laughed pretty hard about it. Wait, they would rather have a jar of piss in their kitchen sink than kids touching their walls? You win. Was literally told by my best friend's dad I was only allowed to eat popcorn one kernel at a time. Somebody probably choked once. Pretty easy to inhale a piece of popcorn. Less likely if you're not eating as many at a time as fit in your mouth. I had to wash the dishes every night, even if I wasn't home for the meal. There were times I'd get home from an away basketball game. I was in the team after 10 PM and the dishes had sat since they finished reading around 6:30 PM. My older brother's nightly chore? Take out the garbage. He'd be done in 2 minutes. I'd have 30+ minutes of washing, drying, putting away, and cleaning up the kitchen. Say mug. My parents' explanation for why it had to be me was that my brother didn't do it properly. Same with vacuuming. My mum used to pay me to be my own babysitter between the ages of 10-14 or so. The rule was that as long as I didn't make a mess and I'd put myself to bed by the time she got home, then I got $10 in the morning. My parents did this. Only I have 2 younger brothers. And the rule was that we would all get paid. But only if we got along and didn't burn the place down. It was very effective. Even if we fought while they were away, we'd all be on our best behavior by the time they got back. Didn't want to miss out on that payday. D. Not mine, but my mother-in-law and her sister will fuss at you if you wash your hands in the kitchen sink. I think that's weird. If there's a sink and some hand soap, I say wash away. My wife isn't like that. No swearing, which includes the obvious as well as stupid, idiot, shut up and fart. My grandmother thinks that fart is a dirty word. She prefers poopsie, which is, in my opinion, far dirtier. No curfew as long as I told my mom where I would be. I was always honest BCS. I loved being 16 with no curfew. If we ever snuck out of a friend's house, we would literally phone home and say we are sneaking out to go to a concert. Bare skin was not allowed to touch the leather sofa. No shorts. Bare feet. Tank tops. Etc. Also, we had to peel mushrooms. It took forever and was completely stupid. I did not even know mushroom peeling was a thing. Just watched a YouTube video to confirm. My mind is blown. Ducking like and subscribe.